Hello everyone, today I want to show you how to make these simple wire bracelets, and this is what they look like. So I've got two different versions here with the same technique, the exact same method of doing them, just using different materials as you can see. So this one I've got copper and blue hematite gemstones, and this one I've got silver wire and then like a copper but dark copper coated hematite. And then what I've done as well on this one is going to show you how to do in the video. On this one I'm using plain 0.6mm wire to wrap around, as you can see there, kind of zigzagging across. And on this one I've used twisted wire for the same effect, but you can see it gives a completely different look. Now that one I said I used 0.6mm wire to do that. This one what I did was twist two lengths of 0.4mm wire together, and I used that 3 times over, so in place of the 3 lengths of plain 0.6mm. So that's how you can get a different effect like this. So this is what they look like. Can give a really nice impact even though they're quite simple bracelets and delicate as well. So if you want to learn how to make these, then keep watching. So these are the things that we'll need. Now first off, I've got my 2 gauges of wire here. They're both regular round wire, and I'm just working with the copper wire. Now the first gauge is a 1mm here. That's going to kind of be the structure of the piece. And then I've got a 0.6mm, which is what I'm going to use to wrap around with. Then the beads that we need are up here. Now these are 4mm rounds, that's what I'm using, and I'm just using the blue coated hematite gemstones because I thought the blue would go really nice with the copper coloured wire there. But what you want to make sure with beads that you use, and you can obviously use whatever beads you want to, you just have to make sure that the holes in the beads are large enough for your 1mm wire to go through. So worst case scenario, say if you can't find beads where you can get that size wire through, you can always take your wire down to a 0.8mm, but I wouldn't personally go lower than that because you still need that structure. And then finally we also just need some findings here. So I've got my jump rings, I've got my clasp and extended chain to finish off the bracelet with. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So as for the lengths of wire that we'll need, first off we'll need 1 length of a 1mm wire, and this is about 80 centimeters long, and we just need this one. And then we also need 3 lengths of a 0.6mm wire here, and these are about 70 centimeters long each. So we'll need to start with a length of 1mm wire here that we already cut off, and we basically need to start one end of the bracelet and make the very first loop on that end. So for this 1mm wire that we're working with first, we need to find the middle of it, so we just need to gently put the ends together here, and then up here just gently find the middle, which is about here. Then I'm going to use some bail making pliers here, my 6-step bail making pliers. You can also just use round nose pliers or any form of mandrel. It's just something that has the size that you want your loop to be basically. So I'm going to use the second smallest one here, place that where roughly the middle of my wire is, and then we just need to make a loop. So I fold my wire around here, bend it around the pliers, to get a nice round loop. That's then going to be the one end of the bracelet, or something like this. And then we can just straighten out the ends as well. Make sure we don't have any kinks, and we're going to want to keep making sure we do that throughout if we need to. So there we have the loop. Now I'm going to take some flat nose or chain nose pliers, because we need to make a little angle going from the loop here. Because obviously these are just splaying out to the side. I need them to come down so we can start making the bracelet. So I'm going to place my pliers pretty much right next to my loop, and just go out a few millimeters really towards the one side there. I usually use my pliers themselves as a bit of a gauge to measure against, and then I'm going to bend that side of my wire down so we get an angle in there. It doesn't have to be perfect just yet because we can keep adjusting them after. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So place my pliers in roughly the same place so we get an equal and even length on both sides as far as possible. And then bend that side downward as well. So as you can see, we're now having them both wires come straight down from that loop, and you have your little angles up there. And then you can just adjust this, and if you're not completely happy with it, to make sure it sits nicely, and you have your wires coming straight down next to each other just like that. So now that we have this ready, this is going to kind of be the base of the bracelet. What we need to do then is take our lengths of 0.6mm wire and we need to attach these to this kind of frame that we made. We're just going to use one at a time here to begin with. I'm going to just turn it around, and then what we need to do is get one of my 0.6mm wires that we already cut out at a time and then work towards the end there. So I then need to attach it. So I take my end of my 0.6mm wire and place it down through the two legs there of the 1mm wire and just leave a tiny little tail for us to be able to hold on to. Then I need to wrap it around that side, and I'm kind of working on that little angled section just below the loop. Now obviously your wire can slip down the base wire, don't worry about that, and just push it back up. So I'm wrapping it around, gone the whole way around once, and then make sure it comes back up through the middle there. I'm pointing over to the opposite direction where the tail is, so it looks like that. So that's one attached. We now need to do the same with the other two as well. So take your next one, do the same thing, put it down through the middle, have your little tail there, then wrap the long end around the base wire. Making sure you come up between the two legs of the 1mm. And push it all the way up like that. And again, have the long end coming out next to the other one, the opposite direction of the little short tail. And also you just want to attach the last one the same way. So I've now attached all three 0.6mm wires there, so they're sat right next to each other. And all the long ends that we're going to be working with are coming out to the opposite direction as the short little tails there. So now we need to start getting into the wrapping basically. So I'm going to hold it in a position that's comfortable. Make sure that these tails where I attach the wires are pushed right up as far as they'll go. And then these long ends that we're going to be wrapping with are naturally coming towards the opposite direction, basically just below the bend that we did. So I'm going to keep them there. Make sure the wires keep lying next to each other. These 0.6mm wires are lying next to each other and they don't cross over as we go. The first one or two wraps are the most difficult ones because obviously this is still loose and the wires can still move. But once we add one or two wraps and one or two beads, then that's going to be much easier. So I then wrap it around towards the back like that. So these are coming towards the back, around the back of my two base wires there. And then we need all these three wires to then also come up in between. So just gently pull them up like this. And then if they do cross over in this process while you're kind of wrapping them and pulling them up in between, you just want to make sure before you do your next wrap that you flatten them out basically so they lie right next to each other instead. So there we go, that's the first wrap. So now before we continue with the next wrap, we need to just remember to add in our very first bead. So basically you want to add your bead the opposite side to where you just wrapped. So that means on this tail leg of my base wire. So I'm going to get one of my little rounds, hematite rounds, then place it on the end of my wire, let it drop all the way down there. And as you can see, these 0.6mm wires are kind of in the way, so just lift them up and push that bead down. So that's going to sit in that gap now. And then we take the 0.6mm wires, they're now coming up between the two base wires. So we wrap around the side of that top one that we just put the bead onto. And then around the bottom of it again, so towards the back. So there we go. That's a very first wrap where we capture the bead in place. And what you just want to make sure of as well is as you're doing these wraps, you want to make sure that your base wires stay as straight and even compared to each other as possible. So as you can see, you want them to be evenly spaced next to each other, so you don't want them to start pulling in too much or get too wide. But that will also get a bit easier as we go. So I'm now coming towards the other side. Again, we need to remember to come up between the two legs, like that. And I can already see now it's starting to get much easier because it's much more solid because we've done a couple of wraps and added a bead in. So remember, we need to add a bead into this gap to fill that in. the opposite side of where we just wrapped. So I take my hematite round again that I'm working with, place it onto that long leg of my base wire, just lift up the 0.6mm wires and then push it down. So that's going to sit right there. And then you want to keep wrapping, do the same thing over and over again. You can just also gradually, every time you do a wrap, make sure you just push it down so it sits as close to the bead, on top of the bead there, as you can get it. And then go from the front, wrap towards the back. Always going at a slight angle so you're kind of graduating, obviously, making space for those beads. So there we go. Remember to come up between the two. And then as we're doing that, just make sure that they stay lying next to each other, these 0.6mm wires, rather than crossing over. And then we're in a position to add in another bead. So on the opposite side where we have a gap. And then basically this is all there is to it. You just keep wrapping your group there of 3 0.6mm wires from one side to the next, remembering to come up in between as well, and then just adding a bead into every gap that you make with those wires. So you just keep doing this all the way down, remembering as well to keep the spacing between these two base wires as even as possible. So wrap almost the length that you need for the bracelet. To remember to leave space as well for the clasp part. That's going to add a bit of length. So keep doing this and then I'll show you how we finish off the other end. So I've now kept doing the same thing here, as you can see, over and over again, and I've reached almost the length that I want a bracelet to be, taking into account obviously the clasp and also just finishing it off here. So now I've reached this point where we are getting to the end and we need to finish it off. So what I have, I've gone around with my wire once more and then have that little gap where we need to add the bead. So I just need to add my very final bead here to that one. So to that leg where you have that gap basically, just like that, just like all the other times. Make sure to push it down underneath those 0.6mm. And then before we wrap these around, what we need to do is just shape these legs of the base wires, just to look like the beginning where we have those little angles. So it goes into a point basically. We can make that loop as well. So to do that, I'm going to get some flat nose or chain nose pliers out, and then you can look, it doesn't matter what side you do it from, but basically we need to start on this side, right above the bead. I'm going to place my pliers and then bend this wire in towards the middle, like that, and then the other one I'm going to place it right above where my last weave or wrap around ends, and then also bend this towards the middle. So now these two are going to cross over each other there, just like they do in the beginning where we just have that loop on the end. So now we can then finish off these wires. So what we just need to do is do this one at a time, kind of the same way that we attached them in the first place. So you can always just bend the others out of the way here, because I'm going to then just take the very first one, the inner one, first. We'll come in up through the middle, then wrap it around the side, and then I want to go around just this one base wire, wrap that around that once, and push it all the way down, just like this, and have it come up to the other side here. So that's the first one. Make sure to push it all the way down so there's no gaps. Take the very next wire, so this is the middle of the three, do the same thing, wrap it around this single leg of the 1mm that they would naturally be crossing over and wrapping around if we just continued making the same pattern down the bracelet, and push that all the way down, coming out to that side again. So again, they're going to be lying next to each other out here. The very last one, do the same thing, wrap that all the way around, just like that. And then you can see we again have these wrapped and attached on this angle coming up towards the point, exactly the same as the other end, just finishing them off instead of starting them. So that's what it looks like now. So you can just make sure you're happy with how everything sits, and then what we need to do as well is just finish off the actual wires and the small tails as well, and then make the final loop up there. So what I'm going to do first is finish off these 0.6mm wires, just to make it a bit easier to make the end here to get them out of the way. So as you can see, they're kind of pointing this way now. If we're just going to continue wrapping a little bit in the same direction that they're going, so they're kind of going inwards towards the bracelet rather than just facing outward. It's just to get them into position here. And then I'm going to get in my case I'm going to be using some flush cutters, use whatever wire cutters. And then we need to cut them off here. Now you want to just leave about 1mm or so from where they're coming out, wrapping around that base wire. So just do one at a time. Cut them off so you have that 1 or 2mm. All 3 of them. And they're not going to go anywhere cutting them off like this because it's wire, so it's going to stay in place. But then what we have now is those little ends of that 0.6mm wire that it's obviously sticking up, so we just need to get rid of them. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers for this, and then just one of the wires at a time. I'm just going to place my chain nose pliers on that single wire, press it a little bit, and then I like to roll it in the same direction that the wire is going. So basically what we're doing is tucking them in. So the very end of those wires are going to get tucked into the middle. So they're not going to be sticking out, or we can't feel them. We won't catch or scratch on anything while we wear them. So you can see you won't be able to feel them at all. And if you can still feel them a little bit, you just need to tuck them in a bit more. So that's that end. You basically need to do the exact same thing with this end. You just got shorter tails to do it with. So wrap them over the middle there, cut them off, and then tuck in the ends. So once I got rid of my 0.6mm wires on both ends there, and it's nice and neat, and that's finished off, what we have left now are these 2 long ends of a base wires of the 1mm wire. For that, I'm going to again get my bail making pliers out. I like to use these to make sure that the loop that I'm going to be making is going to be the exact same size on both ends there. So all I'm going to do is we need to make a loop on both of these wires. So I'm going to start with one. I'm going to be using the second smallest on my pliers there. I'm going to place them kind of in that gap so it can't go down any further, because the loop is going to be going across there. And then I'm going to take this first wire that I've got my pliers onto first, wrap that back around the pliers, just switch position, and then back out to the other side here. So we have this loop, that's the first one. Then we need to go from the other side here, do the same with this wire. So with this you can just go through this loop. Also helps with the positioning, get them in the same place. And obviously if you're using bail making pliers, you'll make sure they get the same size. Wrap this back around the same way, change position, and then just finish it off up to the side. So there, we have the 2 loops lying pretty much on top of each other, if you can see like that. So what I'm going to do is just press them together to make sure they're going to lie as flat next to each other as possible, without kind of distorting the shape obviously. And then with one of them here, what I'm going to do is cut off the excess. So where I want to cut it is so the end that I'm going to have left is going to bud right up against itself. So this is on one side. So I'm going to cut the rest of the wire off from there, and then I'm just going to take my chain nose or flat nose and just make sure to tuck that end down. So basically it's going to be sticking up against itself, and in that way we got rid of that end. It's not going to be sticking out so we can feel it. So that's one side. The other one here, what I'm going to do with this is I just want to keep hold of these 2 loops and then just use this to wrap around the side here, all the way to the other side, and all the way around where it came from. And this is just to secure it, and secure both sides of the loops together as well. All the way back to this side, and then we can just cut this off. You can also make a little spiral if you want to, depends on the design that you want. But cut it off so you have about, again, 1mm or so, and then just use your flat nose or chain nose and squeeze that in, and then you can also get that to tug in right there basically pretty much the same place where we tucked in the 0.6mm wires. So there we go. Can't feel it at all. So we've now finished off this end as well. And then we there have these two loops we're going to use to attach our jump rings to, and then also obviously the clasp and extender chain. So that's how it looks now. All that's left to do is then start shaping this. You can either shape it around something that has the size and shape you want it to have, or you can just start using your hands and your fingers. What I like to do is just kind of start from the middle and then do gentle moves. So you don't want to go in one place and do a big bend. We need to have gentle curves. And for this you can easily just run it through your fingers. It'll kind of warm it up and also give you those gentle curves there. And get it gradually into the shape that we need. Now I usually personally prefer to make them more oval rather than round, because it seems to fit a bit better on the wrist, but it's obviously completely up to you. So just keep shaping it here till you have these two going towards the one side and kind of facing each other, making sure you obviously have a gap there, a space to fit the clasp and the extender chain. So just keep working with this for a bit. As you can see, we're pretty much getting there. And then all you need to do when you're happy with the shape is attach whatever clasp you want to use for this with your jump rings through these loops. So I've now attached my findings here with my jump rings, and then we can obviously use the clasp. So the bracelet is going to sit on you nice and securely as well by using a clasp like this. And then this is your finished bracelet. So it looks like this. So quite a nice and delicate one, and obviously quite a simple technique, but it can give a really nice impact depending on the materials that you use. So this is the one with plain wire, and this is the one I did with the twisted wire. So as you can see, depending on what you use, it can give a completely different look as well. I think both of them are equally nice in each their own way. So that's how you make this bracelet. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this wirework bracelet. And this is what it looks like. So you have beads running all the way across, caged in basically with the wire. And all this really is actually a 3-strand regular braid where you add beads into it. And you achieve this effect.